Going live, and we are live. Hey, it's Madison Chase, and welcome to another episode of It's Yes or No, your entertainment source and news option. I'm Madison Chase, and my girl all the way in Wisconsin. Tell them who you are.
That would be me. I'm Steph Z here, all the way in Wisconsin, and you wouldn't believe it, but I got a little bit too much sun yesterday. There is sun in Wisconsin. It just takes a while for it to come out and play.
Yeah, I love it. I love it that it's playing with you. You look good, Steph. I like the extra sun.
Thank you.
So let's talk about it. This is a kind of serious subject, and we're talking about Bobby Brown from New Edition, his tell-all book in relationship to his ex-wife Whitney Houston, and the tell-all book. He's telling it all, or so he says. Allegedly, he's telling it all. So I'm going to read some clips with the facts from New York Daily News. So this story says Bobby Brown opens up about his sex life in a new book. It's a new edition, and the name of the book is called Every Little Step Up. He's 47. Say it again, sir.
I said ha ha like his song Every Little Step.
Every Little Step. It actually hits today, Monday, but he's been doing a lot of interviews and telling his side of the story. And so here's an excerpt from the book. It says, "Let me say the night with the midget blew my mind." Brown writes in a passage about his marathon bachelor party, which took place in New York, Las Vegas, Miami, and Paris. That's a serious bachelor party. You could do things that aren't just possible with an average-sized woman. According to Brown, it was his late wife, Whitney Houston's idea that he sow his wild oats before they tied the knot in 1992. Brown was only 23 at the time and says Houston wanted him to get all of the partying and the effing, y'all know what that is, around out of my system before the wedding. Brown had nearly a decade of sexual experience before he had sex with a midget. When he was 14 and singing with New Edition, he was thrown in a woman's jail for driving a moped without a license. I'm confused. Why was he thrown in jail with women? But that's a whole other thing. We're not going to touch that. Presumably because it would be safer for a kid his age. According to Brown, that's where he ran into a 20-something-year-old friend of his sister and found a hidden corner of the facility and had sex. Despite his early musical success, Brown said he was broke by 17 when he left New Edition, but after his 1986 King of Stage solo album came out, he was back in business. To put it mildly, I went buck effing wild, he writes. My thinking was get as much as you can while you can. Brown was anything but a virgin in 1989, which is when he says he hooked up with Madonna in a recording studio bathroom. This is so interesting. We got together a few more times, but I wasn't interested in dating her. Brown says she was just too wild even for me. That's kind of insulting, but okay. It's not just his own sex life that Brown digs into. The memoir alleges that Whitney Houston, his ex-wife, whose drug problems he writes about extensively, had an affair with rapper Tupac Shakur and engaged in romantic relationships with other women too. And the other woman that he's referring to is Robin Crawford, who was Whitney Houston's childhood best friend and eventually her business manager and former assistant. Not her business manager, she was her former assistant. So these are some of the facts, you guys. These are definitely not all of the facts because I'm just taking this story from the New York Daily News. I'm actually going to post the actual link to the story so you guys can read it for yourself. So Steph, you got some questions. What are your questions? Before you get into the questions, I just want to say I love Whitney Houston. I adore Whitney Houston. I think what she did for R&B music and the entire music industry paved the way for a lot of artists. So that's just my 2 cents about Whitney Houston. But go ahead, Steph, with your questions. Take it away.
You want me to ask the questions?
Okay. So I'll ask the questions. I'm sorry. So question number 1 for you, Steph. Here's question number 1. Question number 1 is it okay to talk about an ex after they're no longer here, either incarcerated or they've passed on? Is it okay to talk about an ex-wife, ex-boyfriend, husband?
I'm going to say no. And this is why. Well, no, I'm going to say no if it's I'm going to say that it's not okay to talk about an ex in a malicious intent in those situations, because then they're not there to defend themselves. So many Whitney Houston, she has such a it's amazing. She's like a household name and we love her. And for someone to maybe taint her name when she's not here to defend herself, I think now if there was someone else talking about her and an ex came to defend her because they knew her better, that seems a little bit like wishy-washy. But to hold someone else's name in vain or to talk about someone after they passed away, I just don't think that's fair. Like, why didn't Bobby Brown say all this stuff when she was still here? When she was struggling, he was really struggling, and he really thought that it was because some maybe love affair she's having or some acceptance she wasn't getting. Why the hell didn't he step up then and help her? If he cares so much, if he cares to write about her, where was he then? Like, that's kind of my feeling, you know, and we go back and forth, and, you know, I know one of the other questions will be their relationship, but it's like, it just seems like a little too late, and now you're just trying to cash in on something because she were, I mean, I don't know, maybe his intent isn't as malicious as I'm feeling right now, but it just seems like, it seems to me that Whitney Houston had a problem for a while, and if he's still that attached to her to write a book and include her in it and disclose her information, and, you know, and I understand there was Whitney, there was Bobby Christina, a lot of tragedy has happened, but, and maybe we don't know, and maybe he was reaching out to her when she had a problem and it was just too far gone, but it just seems like that wasn't what we heard from him right after she passed. We didn't hear, I was trying to help her, she had this relationship. It's like he was trying to keep all this juicy information so that people would go buy his book. And that to me is crappy.
So I am going to wholeheartedly 100% agree with you that no, it is never okay to talk disparagingly about someone who's no longer here to defend themselves. And, you know, Robin Crawford is obviously still alive, and she never really was in the public eye. So now you're forcing her to come out to defend herself and to defend Whitney Houston's legacy. And I think it's okay to talk about an ex if you're talking about something positive. Like, speaking of Prince, just really quick, there were a lot of things that he did for a ton of nonprofit organizations, one called We Code that no one ever knew about, where he helps young boys and girls of color to learn how to code. But people didn't know that, and he didn't want it to be known, but it's coming out after he passed. So something like that, because it's positive for Prince's legacy and his name, yes, we could talk about that. But when you're talking about someone's sexual, private, intimate moments, it's okay if you want to talk about everything that you did and who you did it with, midgets, dogs, animals, cats, whoever, whatever you want to talk about. It's okay for you to talk about that, but I feel like now he's in a place of desperation, and I never like to make judgments about what someone chooses to do to make money, but I think to really talk about, you know, number one, like you said, if you really loved her, why didn't you do that when she was alive? But one of the stories that I also read was on Gawker, because Robin Crawford is still alive, and the story says, the title is Meet Whitney Houston's Rumored Lesbian Lover, Robin Crawford. One of the most common theories surrounding Whitney Houston's descent into drugs and eventual death have to do with the influence of her husband, Bobby Brown. Now there's a new interesting theory. Maybe it wasn't her marriage to Bobby that turned her into an addict, but breaking up with her lesbian lover, Robin Crawford, had something to do with her descent into drugs. So again, I don't agree with that story. And I think we have gotten so used and so desensitized to talking about celebrities and athletes in such a negative way that it's become commonplace that even looking at Robin Williams after he died and people had such negative things to say, so much so that his daughter decided to get off of social media because some of the negative things that people were saying about her father. So I just don't think it's ever good to talk about someone who's no longer here to defend themselves. So that's my 2 cents. Question number 2. You ready, Steph?
I am ready.
I didn't mean to go into a soliloquy.
That's
Question number 2. Is it okay to write a book about your relationship without consent from your partner or ex-partner?
This again is, I mean, people do it all the time. And I feel like if someone did this about me, I'd be pissed.
Yeah.
And I would never do this about somebody else. I understand if you, I mean, like, and again, too, it's like, who am I? Step Z. So if I wrote a book about one of my relationships, nobody would know who I'm talking about. The person that I was writing about it might know. But when you're Bobby Brown and you're writing something and you know it's insinuating that you're talking about Whitney Houston, it's like, why? I just don't understand it. I don't understand, like, isn't a relationship supposed to be something that 2 people share an intimate bond with 2 people, not something that you make to create the world? And call me old-fashioned, I don't know, like, that's just my opinion on it. Like, my relationships are my relationships. Good, bad, ugly, like, they're my relationships. They're for me and for whoever's in that relationship with me to discuss. I'm not going to go writing, you know, unless, like, the only way I could see it, it was like if Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston together, one of them had a drug addiction, the other one pulled him out of the drug addiction, and because they were celebrity, they were using their platform to write about the ups and downs, you know, drug problems, and the fact that, you know, that people that are suffering can relate to them, and even though they're celebrity, everyone has these problems, and they're trying to level a playing field and make people feel comfortable. Fine, that I can support, and that people, I'm sure, would do that together. But all this other, like, he said, she said, this was our relationship, I don't really have tolerance for it. I don't want to read about it. I don't want to know about it. It's just, you know, I want to remember it the way that I remember it, and I don't want somebody to taint that, especially when it's one-sided.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I think her legacy is her legacy, and the same thing with Robin Williams. Like, his legacy was great. Like, no one can dispute their individual talents. Like, Robin Williams did some amazing films. He made people laugh, and I think a lot of times people forget the sadness that sometimes comes with being an artist, whether you're a comedian or a music legend like Whitney Houston is. So I definitely, I agree. I don't think it's ever okay. But I think with the advent of social media, again, we're talking about social media and people airing, you know, their sex tapes and becoming famous from sex tapes, and people doing pretend sex tapes, and people, and, you know, pornography businesses offering people millions of dollars for the sex tape. So I think we've just come to this desensitized, you know, environment where people are willing to air their dirty laundry and someone else's to make some money. So I think the advent of reality television and what people will do for money, here's a perfect example of someone, you know, really negatively talking about someone who's not here to defend themselves. So I agree with you, Steph. That's a long way of saying I agree, and I definitely don't think it's okay ever, 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 never, ever, not even to make some money. And if you need some money, get another job or make another CD or an album. Get your friends, make some money. Okay.
Go on a tour. People will go see you. Go on a tour. Get out there.
Yeah, get back to work. Okay, so question number 3. Was Bobby Brown a good influence for Whitney Houston?
Now, see, this one's a tricky one because I feel like for me, this might be a little bit of yes and no, because, you know, I feel like from the research that I've done, there was definitely times where they looked happy, in love, as a unit together. Was that negativity and drug stuff that isn't healthy? It seems that way. Do I know for that? Like, was I there? No. But you know what I mean? So I feel like in the beginning it was good and it was love, but I don't know, I guess, you know, thinking about it more and even talking through it, at the end of the day, I'm going to have to say no, because introduction and that love might have altered what she thought was love and acceptable, and the feelings that she yearned for so much after that.
That's, yeah. You know what? I think that's an interesting question. Are you done, Steph? I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, yeah, I'm done.
Okay. That's an interesting question, and I don't know if I'm yes or no on that question, because I don't know Bobby Brown. And if we go with what the media said about Bobby Brown, but just from that excerpt that I read about his sex life and partying and going buck effing wild, as he liked to say, I can't say that that was a good influence on Whitney Houston. But I don't know Whitney Houston prior to her being with Bobby Brown. Like, I can't recall who she dated prior to Bobby Brown, and if that person was a better influence. And then sometimes women like the quote unquote bad boys. I don't know why we sometimes do that.
Right.
But for me, I think it comes with maturity too. Like, once you get to a certain age, you want the guy who's going to be a good husband and a good father to your kids, not necessarily, you know, the guy that's the bad boy that all the girls want. And so I don't know. That's a hard question for me to answer. Was he a bad influence? But if I had to go with my gut and the excerpt that I just read about him partying and getting all that effing out before they got married, and even though that was Whitney Houston's suggestion, so he says, because we're going to say allegedly that's what he said. So I think this whole book, this whole tell-all book, when the other party is not here, when his daughter isn't here, like all of that stuff, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth that someone would stoop this low to make money when their ex-wife is, you know, she's a legend. So it bothers me, and it makes me sad that we've come to this kind of environment where people recklessly say, not just in entertainment, but in politics, people recklessly say and do whatever they want, and there are no repercussions. So, you know, my hope is that nobody buys this book. That's my hope. And that he'll be taught a lesson that you can't just, you know, say whatever you want when someone isn't here to defend themselves. So that's my 2 cents in the Bobby Brown tell-all book. And I'm not promoting his book in any form, fashion, whatever. And if anything, I would say don't buy the book, so that, you know, we don't have to see more celebrities talking about their exes when they're no longer here to defend themselves, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. So I'm Madison Chase, and again, this is just our opinion. And we try to err on the side of being more positive and, you know, promoting the good in the entertainment industry and some of the great things that people are doing off the field and, you know, in front of the cameras and behind the actual recording artist. So you can find me on YouTube at One Mad Chase, and my Twitter handle is Madison Chase Fit. And I'll put all my other social media in the bottom of this video, and make sure you like it and subscribe. And thank you so much. There's a couple of people that I can remember off the top of my head. Thank you, Jake Smith, Sun Cloud, I think it's SpongeBob something, and one more person, Rosie Cheeks, something like that. So thank you guys for leaving your comments and your yes and no. And again, I'll put these 3 questions in a little eye. I would love to get your yes or no and where you stand. So again, it's yes or no. It's your entertainment source and news option. So make sure you leave your comments below, because we really want to know. And this just isn't about us talking. This is really about, you know, you voicing your opinion. So Steph Z, where can people find you?
That's me. You guys can find me on Instagram and Twitter at IAMSTEFZ. And my YouTube page is Steph Z TV. That's Steph with an F. And yeah, definitely leave your comments. We'd love to hear what you think about all these things that we talk about. I mean, that's what we're here for, just start a conversation.
Thank you, Steph. Good to see you.
Madison.